I was pregnant with my first child, listen, I was the girl and the teenager who babysat every kid I was around. A kid would walk into the room, I'd be like, I've got this. Parents, I'm in control now. I wanted to be a mom more than anything in the entire world. And in fact, I tricked my husband because when we got married, I was like, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom and do my kids, and that's it. And then a couple of years after we were married, I became a doula, which is where I'm like going to be gone for undetermined amounts of time, and I hear the kids have fun for the next 24 to 48 hours. So he's handled it really well, though. I've trained him really good. When I was pregnant with my first child, we went to our first appointment when I was 11 weeks along, and the doctor couldn't find the heartbeat. Did an external and an internal ultrasound and no heartbeat. And the OB said, okay, you need to have a D&C or you'll bleed to death, and I'll give you guys a few minutes to talk about it, and left the room. And my husband and I were devastated. It was our first child. And she walked back in 10 minutes later and was like, oh, you're not dressed yet. And I was like, yeah, it took me more than 10 minutes to process what you just told me, sorry. She left the room and gave us information on how to do the D&C and everything, which it's so funny to me that it was so urgent that I was going to bleed to death, and she scheduled it for 3 days later. And as we were walking out of the office, we were the last patient of the day, of course, and everybody was standing there staring at us as we sniffled our ways out of the office. And my husband and I had driven separately to the appointment because he had left from work. And so we stood there. I still don't know why we didn't get in our cars, but we stood there staring at our cars side by side, just standing there. And my husband said, it's okay, we'll try again. And I went from that moment she told me to walk into the car was probably 20, 30 minutes, and I felt a little bit better. And then I felt mad because I didn't want to feel better. I didn't want another baby. I wanted this baby. And then I felt guilty because I felt better. It's like been 20 minutes and you're already moving on to your next child. And we went home. We had our D&C a couple days later. A couple days after that, we were scheduled to lead worship at a church. And so we did that. And afterwards, I knelt down on the altar and I prayed. And I was like, I don't know if I can go through this again, God. And he said, you won't. And our next baby was born perfectly healthy about a year later. And we'll never know if my baby was a boy or a girl, but we chose to view him as a son, and we call him Noah. And if I get to heaven and he's a girl, I'm sure he will forgive me. She will forgive me. It's so much easier to say my son, to say my baby Noah, than it is my baby he or she, them, whatever it is we do. And I don't judge anybody who doesn't choose a name for a baby, because it does feel weird sometimes where I'm like, well, I don't technically know. But it has brought a lot of healing for me to identify him as a person. One of the things that I think society has done, it was the first wave of abortion, was minimalizing the miscarriage to where it's just a pregnancy that's ended. And that was the first step. And then, of course, it was like, well, it's only the first few months. So as long as it's within the first few months, we can abort it. Everything's fine. And now it's turned into the whole pregnancy. You even have some of these people saying, well, what if the baby survives the abortion? It's like, well, it's okay to end the baby's life. So even after birth now. And this is not an America-specific problem. Abortions around the world happen 138 times a minute. And only 3% of those are happening inside the United States. And when you go to rural areas in Africa, if they give birth to a disabled child that they can't afford to take care of, and they view as a curse from the gods or the ancestors or whoever they believe in, sometimes they'll fill the baby's mouth with tobacco so that they poison them to death. Which really, if they had access to ultrasounds, they would have an abortion, but they don't know the baby's disabled until it's born. So when we minimize the miscarriage, we minimize the whole thing. And when we minimize the whole thing, we're minimalizing human life. And if we keep going down this path, we will start executing homeless people. We will start, Canada has started allowing assisted suicide they've had people who are suffering with depression who are like, I don't want to live anymore, and they're helping them kill themselves. This is a real thing that's happening in our world, in the civilized world. Like, civilized. I love that you guys are connected with this ministry, and it's called Precious Life Pods. I wrote it down because I want to look more into it, because that is incredible. I remember having a conversation with someone online, and they were talking about abortion. It's like, well, it's under 12 weeks, so it's no big deal. It's not a person yet. And I told him, I said, when you are saying these things, you're minimalizing the loss of my son. And he told me, he felt, like the trolls on the internet. They have so much confidence behind their keyboards. He said, oh, so do you think that we should have tiny baby coffins for baby like yours? And I was like, yeah, I do. I was not told that I had the option to take my baby home. So my baby was either sold to make a vaccine or to do genetic research on, or for his stem cells, or he was thrown in the trash. And that's the reality and a lot of abortions happen into toilets, and nobody knows what to do when that happens either. And if you're dealing with someone who's had a miscarriage and has a story like mine, where like, I don't know what was done with my baby's body. Your baby wasn't in that body anyway. Your baby is home with Jesus, and everything is okay. And they're not mad at us for how we navigated a situation that our society is not built to navigate. But I often find that there's this feeling of, well, I don't want to make this mom feel too much by asking her too many questions about her miscarriage. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who feel like that. There might be some people who do not want to talk about their miscarriage because it reminds them too much of their sadness. But in my experience, 100% of the time, moms love talking about that baby, because nobody wants to talk about that baby. And in my work through bereavement ministry, one thing that I've continually found is how many things are normal. Like when I went to a birth, I had a client who their baby was born stillborn at 36 weeks. And I remember her holding her baby and going, isn't she so beautiful? I was like, I know, look at her little toes and look at her little ears. And she loved that, because that's what we want to hear as moms. Here, look how beautiful my baby is. And it takes practice to say that over a deceased baby's body. It really, really does. But it does feel so good to gush over this baby, just like a normal baby. And I think that women who've had miscarriages oftentimes feel that way too. Like, gush over, like, look at my children that I have now, and be like, because I have 2 girls. And so sometimes I like to picture, like, what would a boy version of one of them be, and gush over him. And one of my favorite things through our miscarriage is my husband, it's guys going through miscarriage, and really guys going through grief. They process it differently. And whenever, especially, you're dealing with an invisible grief like miscarriage, one problem I see very commonly is that the woman is experiencing it, and the husband is taking care of what needs to be taken care of, and either not experiencing it, or how he's experiencing it is taking care of his wife or his girlfriend. And me and lots of other moms like me look at that, and from the outside, he's not experiencing it. I was like, he's not even grieving, like he's not processing it, and again, whatever that meant at the time. And I remember him finally crying about it and saying, this is too much. Like, I just want our son, blah, blah, blah. And we were able to cry together, which was awesome. Not every family is able to do that early on. And so the longer that feeling of he's just not processing it, he's not grieving, he doesn't care, the longer that goes on, the harder the relationship becomes. And losing a child through miscarriage, less often, but stillbirth and later, oftentimes does lead into toxic relationship habits, even divorce. But I remember me intentionally asking my husband, how do you picture our son? Because, if you can imagine, if you've had a loved one who had a miscarriage, if you've had a miscarriage, I think most women picture a little toddler walking through a field with flowers and, maybe, juice or something on their face. I don't know, like, we picture something little. And I was really surprised and fell in love with my husband's vision, and that's become my new way that I picture it. He said, I picture a young man, like 22, 23, and I picture him walking up to me when I get to heaven someday, saying, Dad, I can't wait to show you this place. And so we have such a finite view of our world, like everything is just right here. And we view miscarriage as a loss. And I call it a loss too. To this day, I think yesterday I was calling it a loss to somebody. But the truth is it's an eternal gift. I have to spend the next 120 years or less without my son. Well, and I guess you subtract the years before, so 100 years or less without my son. But I get eternity with him. Eternity to walk in paradise with him. And he gets the best blessing of all. He's never had to pay a single bill. He's never had to pick up dog poop a single time or have a broken bone or anything. He has only known intimate connection with God, closer than even Adam and Eve had at the beginning of creation. So helping our clients reconnect with what the truth is, that these are eternal beings, help them to reconnect with that, humanizing their experience will do a lot of good for them. And it's the only time where, because we talked about earlier that you don't want to be introducing trauma. The truth and the fact is, with miscarriage and abortion, no matter how confident the woman is, oh, I'm fine, it's just, I'm just glad it happened early. Or I didn't want that baby anyway, so I just had an abortion, it's fine. No matter how much they talk like that, biologically, they are suffering and they don't realize it. And seeing signs of stress in their body can help you identify potentially that. And again, we want to just ask a lot of questions. Like, well, you say that you're feeling fine from your abortion or your miscarriage or whatever. Like, talk to me more about that. Like, what makes you feel fine? And just let them talk. And, you might uncover some things that they have hidden that maybe they don't even realize. But oftentimes I find that one of me and my husband's favorite quotes is, be curious, not judgmental. Anybody here seen Ted Lasso? Okay, it's a great show. Y'all should watch it. It has some cussings. Please don't judge the missionary who told you to watch it, but it's such a good show. What that phrase basically means is that when you see a person, you make judgments about them. You decide what they're capable of love or what their story is or whatever. And we have to continually be curious. You're like, well, just because what I see tells me this story, I still want them to tell me their story anyway. And you might be surprised to find a very different story than you expect. So always be curious. When we're looking at grief always begins with joy. Okay, we're only sad because we loved this person so much, and we had so much joy. Like I had taken a few pregnancy tests before the positive test. And so when the positive test was there, I was like, it's going to be negative, but whatever. And then when I saw that line, I was like, oh my gosh. And nobody, if you've experienced that, nobody forgets that feeling of just like, and now it's usually shortly followed with a, oh my gosh, there's no going back. Now I got to give birth to this baby. 18 years, here we go. But there's always a layer of joy. And so that joy doesn't really go away. We just have a struggle with how do we express it? How do we talk about it? How do we engage with it? And so a lot of times, one of the steps that we can help our clients with healing is finding that joy again. Just like with my son, can I take him to his first day of school or dance with him in a mother-son dance at his wedding? No. But that does not take away that he's an amazing person. And he probably has a few of my husband's good traits and a few of his not so good traits, and I know what those are. And that is still true. And also, my love that I experienced during my pregnancy is not wasted. It still was there, and he felt it. Like we know that, you have, they've done research and they have discovered that children whose mothers considered abortion experience mentally feelings of abandonment, and they don't understand why. But their mother was considering abortion, and biologically, that information is fed to our babies. And I have a personal theory that, when you think about babies, they don't know anything, they can't say anything, they can't understand anything, they can't hardly see anything, and all of their senses are limited. So imagine if you were blind, deaf, and dumb, and someone held you. how much more would you feel that physical connection if that was all you had? And so I think that biologically, when we are infants, we are receiving so much information and we are processing it internally. And there's another real, I told you I was going to have one fun fact. I'm going to throw another one at you. They have found brain cells in our heart muscles. They look and act just like brain cells, but they're not in our brain, they're in our heart. And so we think that that's like, when you feel something, you feel it here. We think that those are those brain cells, that they're processing emotion. Now, the annoying thing about these brain cells is they can't think. They can only feel. And so biologically, those babies are feeling love, they're feeling the opposite. They're feeling neglect, they're feeling hate, they're feeling abandonment. And so, I can't remember what got me on that tangent. I was just going, but so then we have that joy, we have that feeling of love, and we have these things that we do or want to do, and then we lose it. And again, it's like we didn't lose the love or the joy, we lost the opportunity and the ability to give it to that loved one, right? Andrew Garfield lost his mom, and he said it really beautifully in an interview. He said, grief is all the unexpressed love. And doesn't that just like phrase it so well? It's like all those things that you want to do. Like I want to go grab coffee with my mom so bad most days. And it just feels like you're kind of like, okay, here it is, and you're carrying it, but you have nowhere to sit. It's like, what do I do with this? And then you feel helpless. My mom was in a lot of pain for the last 9 months of her life, but especially the last month of her life. I mean, like cancer is one of the worst forms of human suffering, I can say for sure. And so there was a lot of I just want her to not be in pain anymore. I just want her to not be in pain anymore. And knowing that the time was coming, she wasn't eating, and then she wasn't drinking, and then she wasn't waking up, and she wasn't talking. And so it's like you see this, like, this is where we're going, this is what's going to happen. And then she takes that last breath, and there's that moment of like, no, can I go back to 5 minutes ago? You just want to just step back just for a minute. And most of the things in life we can, right? Like when you have a good time at a concert, that was so much fun, let's go back. And then you book tickets again for a few months later, and you go again. You're watching a funny movie, and the scene is so funny, and all of you and your kids and your husband are just laughing their heads off. It's like, let's rewind and watch it one more time. And it's so human to just want to rewind one more time. And even like, I've moved so many times in my life, and getting to go back and visit and walk in the same places I walked, see the friends that I haven't seen in a while. And with grief, you just can't do that. You can't just go back. And that doesn't feel right to us because we're not designed to live for 120 years. We're designed to live for eternity. But when our mindset are on, this is all it is, then, well, it just feels unbearable. Like, how do I live the rest of my life without my mom and without my son? How do I do that? And you just have to keep retelling yourself, no, but I get eternity. I love how Francis Chan tells it, where he did a sermon one time where he had a rope, and he had a knot on each end of the rope, and then there was a knot close to the first knot. They were like this far apart. He was like, so this is your life on earth. And then he walks the length all the way to the other end of the rope, and he's like, and this is eternity, but really it's still going. It's just my stage was only so wide. And so the challenge, though, that we have is a lot of our clients don't know Jesus, or a lot of our clients don't have a deep relationship with Jesus. And anytime you have someone experiencing intense pain, it is God calling them to himself. He's saying, you're hurting, I want to help you. And there are opportunities for us to say, you don't have the answers, I do. Let's talk about it. Tell me your story, and let's talk about the hope that I have in Jesus. And so I never want anybody to go through anything painful ever again. I wish I had a magic wand. And yet sometimes I really don't. Because if everything was easy, who would want Jesus, right? Like, life is great, let's just enjoy life. But when we have pain, we have opportunity. Now I want you to look at your clients again and see, what do you think they could potentially be grieving? And I want you to think outside the box with this one. Don't just do the assumption like, oh, her mom died. I want you to think like, oh, she she didn't have the childhood maybe she pictured or something like that. So spend about 5 minutes doing that. Got to get through, we got to fix. But instead, what if we changed our mindset to foster in it, to really just find someone to walk with you. Like, I'm going to be intentional with this journey. Help me process these things. Help me go through it. And it can be for a lot of people, that's a pastor or a counselor or a psychologist, or one of you amazing women. And someone to just be a witness. There's a movie, can y'all tell I like movies? There's a movie called Shall We Dance? And I can't remember the name of the actress. Susan Sarandon has this really great line where this guy asked her, like, why do we fall in love or whatever? And she said, we want to witness for our lives. And I think that especially when you're like in foster care, or you're a single mother and you can't go out with your friends anymore, and all your friends are drinking and partying and you have to stay home and change diapers and nurse babies. There's so much isolation in our society where we just feel all alone. And even me, like, I had my kids on purpose, and I was 23 when my firstborn was born, and all my friends were not having babies, and I didn't have anybody to talk to, and I couldn't go out and hang out with them because I had to drag the baby around, and there was just never a good time, And now, of course, now all of them are having babies, and I'm almost done. I mean, I'm not almost done, but I'm halfway through it. And I kind of like get to be this cool older mom giving the wisdom, the wise advice. Well, this is what I did with my kids, and that's nice, but it doesn't feel the same as like you and me are connecting with this. And thankfully, there's a lot of churches are doing things like MOPS groups and stuff like that to try to help limit this isolation. But finding someone to walk with you in grief is a little bit more complicated. One reason is because sometimes people say dumb things, like, at least you weren't very far along, at least you can try again, at least you can get pregnant in the first place. Some people can't even get pregnant, and we just don't know what to say. And I think that if we can, as a human race as a whole, just admit that, just say, I don't know what to say, but my heart feels for you, and if you want to talk, I'm here to talk, but I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I don't want to say something dumb. And I think a lot of times we feel like, as Christians especially, when we're talking to someone who's not saved, that we have to have all the answers because they came to us for answers, and we don't have them. What are we going to do? And that cycles us back to God's going to do everything anyway. And if we need to have the humility to let go of the pressure of being the perfect response and having the perfect things to say, and we don't have the perfect things to say. And then I can say that from a person who has personally experienced grief whenever, even specific grief. So I lost my mom. When I see someone post on Facebook that their mom died, I don't know what to say. How crazy is that? I went through it, and I keep feeling like, come on, Abby, what would you want someone to say to you? And it's just, there's no magic phrases. But acknowledging that, I think, helps. You also want to invest time in the grief, okay? Encourage taking off work if they can. But even if they can't, encourage journaling, encourage talking to someone, encourage making a memory book of that person, whatever they need to do. I don't like funerals in our country. I love the heart behind them. I don't like them. I don't think that they really, a lot of times, not always, but I don't think a lot of times they really serve the family who are really the ones who need it most. It feels a lot like an opportunity for people to come and feel better because they hugged the grieving widow, and then they can go home and say, well, I did my part. And I don't think that any of us do this intentionally. I think it's just we don't know what to do, again. But back in the old days, there was time preparing the body. You build the pyre to burn the body, or you dig the grave by hand. There's a process to it. There's work to be done. And human beings were designed to work. We need something to do with these hands, because when we are idle, we waste our time or we do dumb things. And so helping your clients really find ways to invest in creative ways that fit with our society, I think, is valuable. And journaling is one of my favorite because, again, there's no negative side effects to it. It's not going to hurt, and it might help. And in this modern technology age, encourage them to make voice memos or record videos or something like that. And even like, you know, if they're an artist, tell them to draw something. Like find some way to honor it somehow. In my experience with stillbirth expected to pass shortly after birth, hospitals have been, in my experience, very great. They have only specific nurses that handle those cases. They want to make sure it's a nurse that's done it before. And all the hospitals I've been to and experiencing this have a little closet with stuff for these families. They have supplies to make footprint molds. They have people donate little blankets, little hats. I'm connected with a ministry called Angel Gowns, and they receive donated wedding dresses, and they cut pieces of them and turn them into little basically little fabric envelopes. It's like the fabric folds around the baby, because a lot of times when babies are born so small or awkwardly shaped because of their disability, normal clothes won't fit them, and so they make something pretty for those babies to be in. So I'm really grateful that I do see a lot of evidence that hospitals do care about that, and I think they really need to have some intentionality with miscarriage too, because that's a lot of times where it starts to happen. A mom's spotting in her pregnancy, runs to the emergency room, and they send her home with a, sorry, here's the warning signs to look out for, have a nice day. So I would love to see hospitals being better about that for sure.
They also need this counseling too, or this, you know, training. Because I feel like medical, you know, a lot of times they're just so cut and dry with it. Like,
yeah, I mean, that was my experience too.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, same with me. So it's just,
and especially with, I mean, like so many OBs perform abortions. You have to dehumanize that baby to be able to do an abortion. You have to have that separation, because when you don't, well, then you don't want to do abortions anymore. And sometimes you'll lose your job because of that.
And that was another thing that she talked about yesterday is the goal at some point is not to just be able to help the women. Obviously that's the first goal, is to help women who are experiencing miscarriage, but that anyone who has an abortion, there almost always is an immediate, you know, remorse, a lot of times, not always. And so ways that this would connect and that they could receive healing as well, begin to receive healing as well through the things in the kit, like the comfort kit and the life pod if they wanted to use that.
Another amazing experience I had a client who, her baby was born with trisomy. I can't remember which one, but they knew that she would not survive long after the birth. And so what they chose to do, and this is another thing a lot of parents don't know that they have the option for, you have the choice of, you know, delivering the baby when you find out at that moment. You can choose to carry the baby until labor comes naturally. What this family chose to do is they would go for weekly checkups to see how the baby was doing. They wanted her to carry her for as long as possible so that she could be as old as possible, so that the amount of time she would survive outside the womb was being as long as possible. But with this specific type of trisomy, she was going to pass in the womb, like it was going to happen. And so they were looking at her heart rate and stuff and seeing how she was doing. And when the doctor started saying, like, you know, we're starting to see a decline, that's when they decided to induce labor. Parents also have the option to have a C-section or to deliver. They chose to deliver. That is a tricky choice when it comes to trisomy, because a lot of times they don't survive the birthing process because they're so delicate and because they're so disabled. So it kind of like becomes a choice for the mother. It's like, you know, if I have a C-section, then that, you know, creates decisions I have to make later for my next babies. And so it just depends. So this mom chose to deliver vaginally. And we lived for about 17 minutes after she was born, and she spent that whole time in her parents' arms. And then I stayed with the family for probably about 6 or 8 hours afterwards. The family got the opportunity to dress her in her outfit, and they got to bathe her and brush her little hair. And the most surprising thing that I think has ever happened to me at a bereavement birth was that mother said, "Abby, would you like to hold her?" And when this parent has so little time with their baby. Oh, and that's another thing I want to mention too, is that This hospital and lots of hospitals around the country are starting to get them too. They have different names because it just depends on the company who makes them, but the one that my client uses is called a cuddle cot, which it's a bassinet that has a cooling system built into the bed. This increases the amount of time that the family has with the baby before they have to lay her to rest. So, you lay them in the cuddle cot, keep them cool, you hold them, you lay them back down, you kind of like go back and forth to help preserve the body. So that I pulled up a chair, they put her in my arms and I held her for a minute. And that moment for me was like, this baby, like I just saw this baby, eyes open, and a couple of hours ago. And now she's running around with my son in heaven, And it just felt like heaven was so close. Like I could almost just walk through the door and it'd be right there. And so I leaned down and whispered, I was telling Noah, I said, hi. And that's what makes this work worth it. Those moments of like, seeing strength in that teenage mother's eyes when she's telling her baby it's okay to go to sleep, getting to be connected to my son, like, it's a gift I can't buy that at the store. I can't work hard enough to get it. I have to go through this journey with these families to get it, and it's so worth it at the end of the day. And I think that no matter what level of bereavement work you guys do, there's going to be moments like that where it's going to be like, I was almost like, seriously, some days I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. And then something happens like, no, I want to keep being a part of this ministry. I want to keep being part of these powerful moments. So we're just going to do this super briefly, but grief is held in your body similarly to how it is held in trauma. So I don't think I have this page in your workbook, but you can kind of refer back to, because it's very, very similar types of things. And especially if you know that they have been through a grief, like, they've never had a stable home life, they lost a child, they lost a parent, whatever it might be. You can kind of like see warning signs in their body that they're not managing it well or coping well. Here's, we talked about buzzwords of processing. This one is buzzwords of grief. The stages of grief, that's like one of the best ones that we hear all the time. And, there are the XYZ stages. The problem with stages is stages always work linearly. It's kind of like you do this, and you do that, and you do this, and that. Grief's not like that. And I think that somewhat we are aware of that, but I also want to throw out that not everybody experiences all of the stages. Not everybody gets angry with grief. Not everybody gets, that not everybody holds off accepting the grief or whatever, So it's kind of like, when we use the stages of grief, I think we're limiting the human experience to a checklist. It's like, oh, now she's angry, done, Also, you can experience the stages like multiple. So like you can start out with 1, and then you go to 2, and then you go back to 1, and then you're 7 or whatever. So you can experience multiple things multiple times and in different ways, The first time I felt angry is probably a month after my mom passed. First time I felt angry about my grief with her. My mom was a powerhouse missionary. People always, what missionary work did your mom do? I'm like, what did she not do? I don't know. She did everything for this small village she lived in. And she was still doing it. She was so active. And I was like, God, you took out your quarterback. Does that make sense? Like, why would you do that? But my grief was really momentarily. I've been walking with God for a while, and I've seen lots of times where it didn't make sense to me, but then later it did. Now, it still doesn't make sense to me why, but I know that it doesn't have to make sense to me. that someday God will be like, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, well, I wish I'd known that. That makes perfect sense. So I like to avoid looking at stages and just being like, where are you at today? Where are you at today? And just keep reevaluating. And keeping in mind, too, that if we're looking for specific things like, anger, avoidance, denial, whatever, we might be missing what's actually going on. We might be thinking that we're, because like when I was angry at God that he took out his quarterback, I don't know that I was angry. I think I would more fit into the denial because of the stage of my faith walk. I was more in the denial that God is sovereign, that I could potentially have more information than the Lord, So when we choose these labels, we might be missing what's actually going on. And then definitely want to avoid the mindset, the language of moving on or moving forward. That is impossible. You can't just be like, I grieved over here and then I'm carried on with the rest of my life and my grief is back there. I really like the visual of picturing grief like a jacket. Like, you put it on. And it might be cumbersome sometimes, especially if you're like washing dishes. You don't really want to be wearing a jacket, you know, it's like getting in your way a little bit. But it's something that you can carry with you and carry with you well, and even can look sharp in. But when we're not carrying it well, if we're just like holding it in our arms, we have it tied around our waist, it can be even more cumbersome. If we're putting it over our heads, we might be not healing well at all. So we have to avoid encouraging our clients to just move on, move forward, get over it, whatever it might be. It's figuring out how to live with it. It's like, I really don't, my mom's been gone for 2 years now, and I don't have a single day that goes by that I don't think, this is something I would tell mom. This is something I'd be texting her about. Or, mom would be starting to prep for Christmas by now, stuff like that. Like, it's always present in my mind. And when I'm trying to move on, well, that's in the way. I'm trying to move on, and it's in the way. It keeps popping into my mind. But when I'm living with it, I'm like, yeah. And so now I can start prepping for Christmas. I can write in my journal. I have a journal for my mom. I can write a little note to her saying like, hey, I was thinking about you today, blah, blah, blah. So trying to do that. Another one is depression. A lot of times we confuse depression and grief. Like I had someone who was like, I think I might need to be put on meds because I'm really depressed because, I went through this grief a couple weeks ago. It's like, is it possible that you're just really, really, really sad because something really, really, really hard happened? Now, the complex thing is sometimes you can be sad and be depressed. So being fully aware of depression and its symptoms can be very, very helpful in your work. I encourage doing some reading and some research on that just so that you can be aware of the signs and symptoms, because it's especially hard to identify when the person is grieving. Normal things of grieving is feeling sad, not feeling as productive as you normally are. Like maybe you wake up at the normal time, but by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're done being productive for the day and you're laying around watching TV for a bit. For a short season, normal stages of grieving. Grieving requires energy. It is not something that like it's just happening in your mind, it's happening in your whole body. Your body is tired. It's similar to pregnancy, right? Like we might look relatively normal, we're functioning relatively normal, but our energy levels are being depleted constantly. And grief is like that too. Now, what's not normal is if intense grief symptoms happen beyond the normal length of time. And there's not a specific date for when you stop feeling that intense grief. But if it's going on for 6 months, a year, or more, you might want to evaluate whether this is more than just grief. And this is not you're too sad, you should be done with this by now. It's we just want to make sure nothing else is going on top of it, because you don't want to be carrying grief and depression at the same time, or grief and anxiety. And that's another one that we don't think of going with grief, but we do. It can be difficult, and we have to be patient, and again, just ask lots and lots of questions. Like, do you feel like this is normal? Do you feel like you're worrying a normal amount, or do you feel like this is excessive? And one of the best kind of diagnostic tools, which we're not allowed to say, and I'm not allowed to say, but, we're investigator tools, let's call it that you can use is this interfering with your normal life? Like, are you sleeping? If you're not sleeping, then whatever this anxiety, depression, whatever, might be too much, and you might need help navigating it. So also I love the language of seasons. Like, there's a reason that God talked so much about plants in the Bible and about farming. When you are in a season of grief, it is helpful, I think, to view it like a winter. Whatever prep we have done for the season, we have done. For right now, it's not about building new things or planting a garden or anything like that. It is about resting. It's about staying bundled up and healing. And then soon, spring is going to come, and you're going to plant new seeds, and you're going to move, you're going to do things that you never thought you could do back during the winter. And each season of life has different needs. And so pausing to invest and be intentional in, what is this season for, is so helpful. And especially in the feminist world that we live in, the mindset is, well, women need to be go-getters all the time, conquering and overcoming and doing way better than all the men. And realistically, you can't do that 365 days for all the years of your life. It's impossible, and it will crush you. So, maybe teaching our clients to whatever stage they're in, even if they're not in a stage of bereavement right now. I mean, I think everybody in this room is old enough to know bereavement's going to come for us at one point or another. And most likely we're going to have no notice whatsoever. So we can teach them how to say, okay, this is what I want to do for the next 3 months. Like, have short goals of like, I want to intentionally purge my house so that it's nice and clean or whatever. And then intentionally schedule a time of just enjoying that clean house, invest in that rhythm of seasons. And that's one of the things that I really love, thinking back again to this miscarriage ministry. When we read the Bible, we read it from a feminist perspective and say like, these women were labeled unclean and then stuck in the woods in a tent or something like that for their periods. And then they had to wash themselves afterwards before they could go back to synagogue. But if we kind of like step back from our assumptions and just say like, hey, would we like during our periods to be left alone and just rest in a tent? And does a spa day afterwards not sound really nice? To just like periods are beautiful, but they are messy and they're uncomfortable and they come with cramps and dirty laundry. And that first shower after your period is done, how nice does that feel? Mm-hmm. And that first shower after giving birth, oh, life-giving. My goodness. So like when we look at it that way, how nice does that sound? And I really would love to do this for myself and encourage others to when we're looking at seasons, every diet and exercise fad out there was designed by men for men. And even some of the ones designed by women, I'm like, you designed this for women? Like intermittent fasting is a great example. So they say everybody should intermittent fast. It's so good for you. But when you look at a man doing it, who lives in a 24-hour hormone cycle all of his life. That's all he experiences. Whereas you have women who have a 24-hour cycle, a 28-day cycle. And then when you look at like that cycle is constantly changing from pre-puberty, puberty, post-puberty, pre-menopause, menopause, and post-menopause. Like our bodies are constantly going through something slightly different. And then you get like stages of the moon thrown in probably and different temperatures and all this stuff that our bodies are constantly adjusting to. And then saying like, oh yeah, the workout program that works for this dude works for you too. And I would love to structure my life to where I'm like, I know my period is coming this week. I homeschool my kids. So why don't I take off the hard parts of homeschool for that week and just do some of the fun bits? We're just sitting around watching National Geographic or something like that, where I can intentionally rest my body. Like, doesn't that sound nice? Yeah, I'm feeling rested.
That's what I do.
Girl, give yourself a star. And I apologize, I've been forgetting to hand those out. I've been so excited talking. I'm going to start doing better. So we have to, though, because our society operates in a feminist, modernized way of living, we have to intentionally teach our clients how to do this. And we have to teach ourselves. Like, I'm standing up here telling you guys you need to do this, but I'm bad about it, and I don't do that either. We all need to listen to her. She needs to come here and talk about it. She seems to got it under control.
That's why I do those things, because I don't.
So we, especially when you're looking at someone who's never had a home, probably never had a mom around, these are things they don't know. And they don't realize that they're setting themselves up for failure. This system, feminist, you can do everything and be a boss babe and raise your kids perfectly and go to the PTA meetings and have a perfectly clean home. This was a system designed for you to fail. Mm-hmm. It is a system designed for you to feel like a crappy mom and destroy you, basically. So don't live in it. But we have to teach them how to not live in it. Because every movie, every TV show, every book, it all says how to do it. So this is a little side funny story. My aunt, my elderly aunt recently passed away. And her sister-in-law who's also my aunt, was going and helping clean stuff out of her house. And she found a book that was still wrapped in cellophane. It looked like something she bought on an infomercial or something. It had like 12 DVDs, a workbook, and a instructional manual. And it was called Unlocking the Female Mind. And she asked me if I wanted it, and I said, I think my mind is unlocked as it's gonna get. Like, I'm not sure I need to unlock it anymore. And then just a really quick note that I think we kind of like covered in a way, but expressions of grief are different for everybody. And they're different for different days. I don't even remember what I was laughing at, but I remember the day my mom passed, sometime in the evening, me and my brothers just cackling our heads off at something. I don't remember what it was, but I just remember that. And I never would have expected that the day my mom passed, I'd be laughing that hard. Now, a couple days after that, I probably didn't laugh for a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. I don't even remember. So don't be surprised, and don't be worried. Like if someone's doing dark humor or something like that, if it's here and there, if you don't feel like it's a normal thing to be going on all the time, but it's just like here or there, don't worry about it. A lot of times, those of us who are going through grief are trying to figure out how to express our grief. And so we might experiment with something and be like, well, that actually didn't feel as good as I thought it was. I'm gonna try something else. So we're all in a learning process. And even as a person who's experienced grief multiple times in my life, I'm still continually surprised at how it goes.